Thanks everyone for being here this morning. My name is Jennifer Markas and I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Jewelry Association. The Women's Jewelry Association is a premier networking and professional development organization for women and men in the jewelry and watch industries. We have over 26 chapters in the United States, so if you're not yet a member, you don't know much about us, please feel free to check us out online. We have some of our staff in the room today, and please feel free to grab me on the way out if you have any questions about our organization. We focus on 3 areas: mentorship, networking, and professional development series like this, which is our education panel for AJTA. We've been coming here for a few years now. We're so excited to be invited back. We try to provide the best, most relevant, innovative programming. I'm very excited to introduce you to our moderator and facilitator today, Ben Smithy. I'll just give you a little bit of background about Ben if you don't know who he is. Ben runs the Smithy Group, which is the leading digital marketing communications strategy firm for big brands, all the way from Coca-Cola to McDonald's, to the ones that he works with in the jewelry space, Rio Tinto and Signet. He's going to be introducing our panelists today, and I'm very excited that we are going to be talking about retail or e-commerce, the blended future. This is something that's on everyone's minds about the evolution of this space and where do we go from here. So thanks so much for being here, and please keep your questions to the end.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, how's everyone doing? Especially now that we turn the lights back on and everyone can see. So a couple things. I think one, that guy, he always introduces us, and I think he gets mad at me because this is the part where I tell you, go ahead and take your phones out, and if you want to take video, and if you want to take photos and stuff like that, go for it. Actually, I'd highly encourage it. Cool? Excellent. One other quick change this year is on that rating thing, they actually changed it this year. And in an effort of positivity, they only want you to write glowing remarks on your review sheet. Yeah. They only want you to write really amazing things like, man, crushed it. Panelists were awesome. Experts, I can't believe I learned so much. Have them back next year, but pay them lots of money. Things like that is what they really encourage you to write down in the feedback section of that sheet. So, we don't want to be too cantankerous. Let's just, do what they want us to do. Cool? Excellent. So my name's Ben. I'm going to be leading our conversation. And really, rather than me sit up in here and read a bunch of bios, I wanted to introduce our panelists, as you can see. Elizabeth Gibson, Shay Carter, Heather Knapp, and Elle Hill, who has one of the coolest names, I think. So when I wanted to start with just letting them tell you a brief 15, 20, which means maybe some of them will go to 30 seconds, on their business, who they are, what they do, and kind of their current situation between traditional retail, e-commerce, et cetera, et cetera. Cool? Ready, set, Elizabeth.
Okay, hi everybody, good morning. My name is Elizabeth Gibson. I own a retail jewelry store in Austin, Texas called Eliza Page, which is my first and middle name. Been open for 15 years, brick and mortar retailer, but have had a website since before we opened. So we do e-commerce as well, but essentially 95% of our sales are in-store. That's my story.
Awesome. Shay.
Hi, I'm Shay Carter from Petal, Mississippi. I'm a second-generation woman-owned jewelry store. We've been open for 32 years. And we started our digital presence, 5 or 6 years ago, and our website launched the e-commerce version last year, so we're just getting started with that, but we've been working really hard on growing our social and digital presence online over the past couple of years.
I'm Heather. I am a founder of Markas 6. We are an online marketplace for fine jewelry, watches, and gemstones. We've been in business for just a little over a year now, so definitely have a different perspective than these previous two.
Great. Hi, I'm Elle Hill. I'm the founder and CEO of Hill & Company, Fine Jewelry Launch and Growth Strategy Experts. We're experts because I've been in the jewelry business for 25 years. And 9 years ago, I launched my own online-only jewelry platform, which rapidly became omni-channel. And then we rapidly IPO'd on the Australian Stock Exchange 4 years later. Since then, we've been advising some of the largest businesses in our industry, and we have a bifurcated client base of large businesses and pre-revenue startups, which are really where my heart is, in finding ways for them to grow.
Awesome. Man, and they crushed it on timing, too. Look at that. We are off to a great start. See, if it were dudes, we would have been up here talking about ourselves and like 20 minutes later. So let's start with the retail, right? Let's start with brick and mortar retail. How has digital started to influence your business? And then particularly, like, where are you on that curve? Where do you see your business at now, and where do you see it going in the future when it comes to digital and retail?
So my background is actually in marketing and advertising and in the digital space. So I had a website before I had a store. But like I said earlier, most of our sales are in store. For us, it's really a massively important marketing tool, an online catalog, and it drives people to our store. And so we're just basically trying to make our website better and better all the time.
Do you see it going e-commerce, and do you see more sales and transactions going online for you, or
Probably,
is your goal to
I mean, that's
keep it
my
in store?
goal for sure, but I don't count on it, essentially. Like, it's not part of our projection strategy. It's like I said, it's for us, it's a huge marketing tool. I still think that fine jewelry, people really want to touch and feel, and especially when you deal with engagement rings, which we do sell, people, they want to come in and look at them on some level.
And Shay, I know, obviously you're working in the digital space and moving into that from a marketing tool as well, and you also mentioned you just launched e-commerce. How does that balance out into your business model and sort of where you're wanting to take Carter's?
We're not really using our website as e-commerce. I mean, it's set up for that, but we use our Instagram and social media and our website more as like a window into our store, because we found a few years ago that we would post something and they would screenshot it and send it here. So we obviously paid more attention to that. Like, I have a girl that just posts pictures, takes pictures, works with Smithy. Like, it's like a whole operation in itself. And like the screenshots and emails and inquiries, and we've become like this little cult following in our area. So we've just realized that our website and our Instagram is more of like an online experience of what it's going to be like when you get there. So they're so excited when they come in.
And Heather, on your side, you've taken an opposite approach. You come from, and you can give the audience a little bit of background on your marketing and sort of the history that you've went through in the pedigree of big brands. But when you guys launched, you went the opposite. So your website is the only sales mechanism for your brand. What made you go that way versus, and are you looking at going the other way into like from clicks to bricks and that sort of paradigm?
Yeah, so I mean, to your point, so I actually, my pedigree actually comes from Apple. So I spent 10 years at Apple. I launched the first iPhone, worked from design to product marketing to product development there. When it was time to leave, I totally jumped ship and brought my kind of tech marketing background into this industry. So when we looked at the industry itself, because it is a little bit trailing in terms of traditional retail and how retail has evolved through other channels, we really saw that there's an opportunity, especially in the innovation and online sector. So some of the statistics is overall retail sales, about 8% came online in 2018. It's going to be 22% by 2023. So really the online growth sector in retail is online. Yeah. I mean, I think Signet even released some numbers. Biggest growth was online for them in this last holiday. So for us, we wanted to see what kind of this space could really turn into. We've played around with doing events and kind of doing other things that would bring that tangible nature of what jewelry can be direct to consumer. Right now, there's not really a plan to open up a physical location, but our model kind of is such that we can get a lot of really great breadth of inventory available without actually having to stock any of it.
Right. And Elle, you are in both spaces. So consulting, obviously, and we play in the same space in terms of we're dealing with brick and mortar retailers from the most traditional of traditional, and then you've taken a company even to the stages of going public that's e-commerce based. Where does the jewelry industry, let's do a compare and contrast. Outside of the jewelry industry, where do you see businesses going, and playing off of what Heather was just saying, but where does the jewelry industry sit on that paradigm of digital first versus still trying to catch up? You know, we hear a lot about the jewelry industry's behind or outdated, but shed some truth on that. Is that true?
You know what, the thing is, the edges of retail and the geographical or physical or channel edges are getting really, really fuzzy. It's no longer your store, or it's no longer even your store or your website, or now it's also, the way you're communicating on LinkedIn, the way you're communicating on Instagram. the transactions can happen anywhere. It's almost immaterial. What's important is that there's 3 ways that you can grow your business, right? You can get more clients, you can charge more money, or you can get people to buy more of what you're selling, right? In almost all of those ways, you got to be top of mind, or you've got to be attracting new people, and you have to show up where they're finding you. And every statistic says anywhere between 78 and 84% of people are discovering what they're going to buy next online. So you have to kind of address the fact that there's no longer physical retail and e-commerce. This is just a demarcation that we have in our minds because maybe we're old and grew up through it. But retail is everywhere now.
And from a retail standpoint, a lot of the things that we talk with our customers is sort of e-commerce can become almost another salesperson on your sales floor, but in the virtual showroom. You mentioned that your plan in the future your business strategy right now doesn't have a lot of e-commerce into that, or that's not your roadmap. What is that, obviously that's a choice, it's part of your business plan. Do you see that ever changing, or is that something that you just see, look, our customer's not there in the next 5 years, but in 10 years, do you see it going e-commerce, or do you see a different brand offshoot? Is there anything in sort of your pipeline that looks to more online sales or transactions?
For sure, but like I said, historically, we haven't had that. It's not a huge part of our gross. And so, absolutely, it's related. It's all intertwined, and we wouldn't be in business if we didn't have a great website and a great brand and a great Instagram presence and all that.
What do you think that experience is for your customers that differentiates you from other retailers, right? Because you guys do have a great website. You do have this sort of digital window in your store, like Shay was saying. What does that look like for you? Can you say what are the focus points for a retailer that you're doing things in store, but what do you use digital for? What are those sort of top things that you feel have been successful for you as a retailer?
Yeah, so we are just really focused on the brand, and we just have a pretty strong point of view as far as what we curate and what we select and who we showcase and the jewelry that we make for ourselves and our customers. So I think more than anything that you have to have a strong point of view. And I think that every store might have their own brand, but maybe they just don't know it. If you're an older store, I don't know. That's your differentiator, hopefully, as a retailer, as a retail brand. A lot of people, we carry multi-lines, like a dozen different designers in our store, but a lot of our customers think that we make everything, and that's great on one hand because they just love our store and our brand. We tell them, obviously, oh, this is made by somebody. But I think that does help us stay ahead, I guess, as a retail store and a jewelry brand.
Do you feel like it gives you more opportunities? It's a bit of a loaded question, but do you feel like it gives you more opportunities over your competitors? And do you see competitors in your area that have not embraced it the way you have?
Yes, essentially I opened my store because I thought Austin needed a cool designer jewelry store. And not that the other stores aren't cool and amazing in their own way, but like I said, we just try to maintain our point of view and stay true to the brand.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? When you say maintaining your point of view, where do you see other people not doing that? Because I totally agree with you, but I'm interested to see where you see other people not doing that, or where you have made choices to continue staying true to that brand versus being able to veer off path.
Yeah, I guess I could do more competitive research in my market, but essentially I would just say maybe some 100-year-old jewelry store that is incredible and amazing and has all these family customers, but maybe they don't have a story to tell about the look, or we definitely have kind of an organic, feminine, fashion, a delicate kind of style. Like people come in our store and they kind of are like, oh, it's sometimes different than other jewelry stores.
Yeah.
Answer your question.
And so everything that you try to do, and then I guess you're trying to make sure that it aligns with those viewpoints.
Yes, there's so much gorgeous jewelry out there, but for us, we choose things that we obviously think our customers are going to buy and that we love and that are on brand for our store as a brand.
Shay, we were sitting down yesterday and a conversation came up around even product selection. So as much as you're using social and digital as a sales tool and as a marketing tool, what was interesting is you guys were using it on stories, like IG stories, as a product curation tool. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you were doing or what that value provides to you as a retailer?
Yes. So when we go to shows, we've started going to a lot more buying shows. We start posting different brands that we're interested in just to kind of gauge, do you like this style? Do you like this pricing? And they are very quick to say no. we hate it. It's too expensive. We're like, okay. So we can't write this order, thank you. And then we go on to the next one. So it's just been very clear and transparent. Some of the things that we thought that they would love, they're like, we hate that. And it's helped us, like you said, realize who we are and kind of our story. We're more of like the most bang for your buck. That's what our ladies want. They don't want all that other stuff. They're like, that's cute. I don't want that. So we have to find a 2, a 1.5 that looks like a 2, and you're paying for a 1 1/4. And they're like, we love it. Like, and then everybody, so it makes it more difficult, but it's fun. And like, they love it. And like, everyone watches us when we go to shows now. And we've started selling more while we're gone than the storefront is while we're gone. It's insane. Yeah.
Yeah. And you
awesome.
were already selling pieces before you're even getting back.
We've sold like 7, 8 pieces. And then we call back and they're like, it's been so slow. I'm like, oh my God. So at least we found that this was happening about a year ago. They were just really into it, and people were coming in. They were like, when are you going to another show? When are you guys traveling again? We were like, do you want us to leave and go somewhere? Like, we'll go anywhere. So we've had a lot of fun with that.
Okay. Elle, one of the things that, both have mentioned from a retail standpoint is it's sort of that first and last mile, right? You hear a lot of e-commerce and you'll hear in a lot of trade talking about the first and last mile of the consumer journey being in person or in store, right? They want to touch it and discover it a lot of times, or historically, like the last mile of like conversion and closing the sale is, especially in jewelry and luxury goods, unless it's a ubiquitous brand like a Louis Vuitton bag or Chanel bag or something like that. Want to touch it, know the quality. How much of that still rings true today? And let's pontificate a little bit into the future. How do you see it changing from a market standpoint?
Got it. I think it totally rings true, and it's still extremely important. And not only do people want to see, touch, and feel your product, they want to see, touch, and feel you, if I can say that. I think what's important is that you have to show up where your customer wants to consume information about you or meet you in person, whether it's at an event, whether it's in your store, whether it's at a conference, whether it's online because you're being engaging and answering. So I think that it's about showing up. The focus has to be on the person whose problem you're trying to solve and where are they looking for that solution. So that first mile is kind of like when they're going through that, idea and info gathering stage. And for us, that might be online, 80% of it is in e-commerce. So you have to be there and you have to drive them into the physical space, whether it's an event, a pop-up, a show that you go and have. People want to meet you. People want to see behind the scenes and they want to know the people behind the businesses. So I think that need to touch and feel is definitely always going to be an aspect. And I think we see the pendulum swinging where everybody said, oh my God, e-commerce is going to kill brick and mortar retailer. And now every Warby Parker, every Lane, you name it, Blue Nile has something in person where people can touch them and start feeling like there's actually a human being behind that has a perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And Heather, this is, I think, is really the first time, if we look at the mid 2000s till today, this is the first time that a brand can do what Warby Parker, Casper, Everlane has done. But just technologically speaking, it's the first time that we could do that. Otherwise, you had to be able to have a budget to buy out TV, buy out radio, buy out print, all of these other things. But with democratized, socialized media, for the first time, brands have been able to start online. So what are you doing with Marquette 6? Because I know you have policies, procedures, authentication, all these things involved to help sort of dissuade the folks that are worried, because I know your main customer is the person that isn't as worried or concerned about that. It's sort of the digital native, if you will. But what are things that you're doing from an online brand to help combat some of those issues and help move the needle further on your side?
Yeah, the one big thing for us is really the authentication piece. So because we are online and because there is that kind of moment of hesitation when you're not physically meeting with somebody holding it before you purchase, is everything actually goes through a third-party authentication. So it's one of those situations where don't necessarily trust us. We're hiring third-party experts in each of their fields to review everything, to validate that it's exactly as it's described. And if it's not, we reject the purchase and refund the money instantaneously. I think the other thing from an online perspective is you have to be able to take returns. People do need that quick moment, and it's very quick. People know when they have it in their hand if it's something they want or not. it's not something that, we don't need to give them a week or 2 weeks to do. It's something that they open the package, they're holding it, and it should be very, yes, I want it, or I don't. And that's kind of the other element with online that can get really tricky, is this idea of people buying things to wear to an event and returning it like we're, rent the runway, but for jewelry. So we're definitely avoiding a lot of those things with a shorter window, but allowing for returns. And it all comes down to customer service. So quick customer service online is as important as standing, in front of somebody, being able to answer their questions right away.
Have you had to train your sales teams, and I'm not sure of the answer to this or not, but have you had to train your sales teams differently, or have you all approached sales differently, knowing that customers have taken an online first approach to discovering your brand, or just knowing how they're looking at your brand next to other things, or the research that they're doing on a Blue Nile to research diamond prices, or whatever you want to look at, or GIA site? Like, have you changed your approach at all in store? And that's not a leading question, but just wondering, have you made any changes in your store or the way you even individually process or look at things?
Yes, a little bit, because we're assuming that a lot of them coming in have already been to our Instagram, Facebook, or our website. Mm-hmm. So initially they walk in and we're talking to them, getting to know them. Have you been doing any research? What have you seen? What pictures has she sent you? And they pull it out, and a lot of times it's ours, and then we'll see that they've made a wish list online through Instagram or Facebook. So then they don't even know they've done that. And we're like, oh, she wears a 4.5. She likes rose gold. She hates double halos, and pears are her favorite.
Excellent.
And they're like, oh, okay, that's so. And
that sounds like a salesperson's dream.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and the only kind of bumps we had were, we have Peyton, who's doing all the inquiries online through Instagram, and she funnels them through Podium, was trying to get them to the right associate so that they can follow up, and then follow up with the boyfriend, and then get them in. But yeah,
but that was the next thing, is go ahead if you have something else to add to that.
Yeah, exactly what she said. But also, I all of my sales associates are female, and everyone is pretty obsessed with anything online that has to do with jewelry and Instagram and brands and all that. So they're pretty digitally aware and savvy, and at the same time, they do all of the comparison shopping as well. And so definitely our customers are coming in educated, which is great for us, but at the same time, we have to be ahead of them to understand what they're looking at, what they're seeing, all the comparison shopping that they're doing as well. So,
do you see a difference? This is an offshoot, but do you see a difference do you consider anything different when it comes to online, retail, digital, e-commerce, outside of the transaction piece? Do you even see this whole traditional retailer moniker as even existing anymore for your business, or do you just see it as this is part of the retail business?
I mean, it's just all intertwined. So I think you have to understand that, just like Elle was saying, it's all intertwined. It's just one. It's not necessarily you're shopping in a store anymore. Retail is totally different, and shopping is completely different. I mean, you're getting your groceries delivered. So everything is just really changing, and so you just have to stay ahead of it, or at least be on the train.
Yeah. Oh, you had something to add to that?
One thing I want to say out loud is that there can be an intimidation factor we find with some people who are either started out with a store and they're thinking about, oh gosh, I have to have social media, I have to have e-commerce. It all seems so inscrutable. It's not actually that complicated. But what you do have to do is learn the skill of being able to do what you do in a store is if you've got that cracked, you have the hard part in my mind. Then what you need to do is just figuring out what you do in real life that equals a behavior or a functionality online, so that you can translate what you already learned how to do, which is really honestly the hard part, into how to deliver it online so that you're accessible in both places. And I think the key to that is understanding the technology that's going to allow you to amplify your manual behaviors in an automated way so that you don't have to hire 18 more people to answer all of the comments on Facebook or on Instagram, which you have to do, but you have to research the tech that's going to underpin you so that you don't need to add 18 staff in order to do it. I think that's important.
Absolutely. Heather, as an industry, right, you've worked for companies that are arguably considered the stereotypical sort of penultimate innovation companies, right? We were joking with her, are you the voice of Siri last night? But she's not. but you can quote
Almost.
it if you want to. Shay was really disappointed that you were not Siri last night. Where, as an industry, are we quote unquote missing it potentially, or do we have, if we want to be softer, where do we have the danger of missing it, from an e-commerce perspective or a retail perspective? You know.
I think what I see is kind of the barrier is that fear of getting into the digital space and knowing what your voice is and being able to speak your voice in a digital way. I'm gonna be the numbers person this morning. Between 65 and 75 or 70% of sales start online. So if your online presence doesn't show what's in your store, allowing them to explore, allowing them to kind of get an idea of who you are before they walk through your door, there's a potential lost opportunity. So it's the idea that, as much as it's fearful, does need to be put an effort into what does e-commerce look like? How does it represent the experience that I'm already showing in my store? And beyond that, then what am I doing from a digital perspective?
May I?
Yeah, go for it.
Also, back
Please do.
when I had my online only, we started online only because it was, 2011. We thought this is cool and this is what it is. And we did our first pop-up event and sold in 4 hours what it took us 4 months to sell. And went ding, 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 ding. Maybe we got to show up in person. So I wanted to just jump in on, some people are starting online only and saying, okay, that's where we're going to be. But when I buy a pair of J. Crew blue jeans in size 4 or okay, 6, but and I try them on and they fit me, then I don't have to go into the store again. I know I've touched you. So if you are online only, think about how you can show up where your consumers might want to touch you and go, wow, she's actually really amazing. Now I trust, and now I'm just going to put that on auto. I'm just going to look at that whenever there's a birthday, so I wanted to just address it also from if you're online only, see where you can be available to your consumer.
Yeah, and even in person, how do you communicate because both of you have such strong brands in person, in your communities, like everything that you do from a website perspective to just your personas around people, right? You're known for that in your communities. So how do you communicate that online? Like, what are the tools that you use to make sure, outside of just saying, we use Instagram, but how do you really make sure that your voice, your persona, your personality is shown through in a way that they feel digitally that they can experience that? Is there any tricks that you have to doing that?
Well, I think you have to be consistent in your visual imagery and your branding and the words that you use. It's really about branding, essentially, consistency. And I guess I've said this several times, which is having a strong point of view and staying on message. I think that is important.
How much do you care about they know you personally versus is your personal brand part of the brand? Do you consider it an offshoot? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a very outgoing person, but at the same time, I'm kind of private. So I do feel like personally, I need to make myself a little bit more of a brand because it is my name, and I do pick out everything. But I also rely on my team. I mean, they're in the store every day, all day. So I definitely feel like, we're a team essentially, and so I think my staff is a huge reflection. I mean, they're part of the brand as much as I am. But yeah, I agree with Elle that people definitely want to know the person behind, everything that's being made, and then people like that. They want to connect with you. They want to see how things are made. They want you to tell them your story and all that.
Yeah.
We try to do blogs on our website, which kind of help people to get to know us. And we have one for all the community service that we do, like photos, how much money we've raised, just like a storyline there, because that's one of the most important things that we do. And then like an Ask Shay, where we're kind of transparent about issues or questions that are big in our industry. And then Instagram, like you said, obviously. We asked them if they wanted to see like more of us or jewelry or a mixture of both. And we were really surprised to see how many people wanted to see like what it was like behind the scenes at work, or like at the show, or what is a show. And so, we'll post like us doing yoga, and they're like, they love it. I don't know. So I think also mine is a little unique because I'm second generation. So a lot of our customers saw me grow up, so they like feel like they know me, so it's like, it's like a big mix of personal and business. They want to be on my personal Facebook and everything.
Do you like that, or do you like?
I've accepted it.
That's a great political answer. I've accepted it.
I didn't want to because I don't know, but then, when you put yourself out there, you really, you kind of just have to get over it. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, so I have to behave and be sweet all the time.
So people really want to see me skiing, I guess.
They do. Yeah. They do want to see you skiing. I don't know.
Yeah, and Heather, on the opposite side, you guys have built a brand that's really around the brand, and the blog has different travel and all the different facets of, no pun intended, slight pun intended, different facets of the business and the brand of Markas 6. But it's not necessarily your personal brands in there. It's not, okay, I'm Heather and I like this. You're not necessarily the curator. What does that do for your brand, and how does that strengthen your brand particularly?
Well, I think the one thing that we want to really stand out as a brand is be able to give variety. Mm-hmm. I think for me, kind of, and family members and everything, we all are completely different when it comes to style. So if you were to pull my siblings and I and say, what store would you go into? Most of them, we'd never go into the same store. So taking kind of like understanding that, it's important for us to have as much variety in terms of style, price point as possible. So, what we do curate is we try to curate kind of unique individual type of designers that bring kind of a different perspective into the industry, and think about kind of those that maybe don't have direct access to a physical location that has jewelry that's going to reflect who they are. So trying to capture a different audience that is maybe kind of more landlocked based on their physical location. So that's kind of one of the approaches that we took. And so, yeah, it's an overarching brand that houses all of these other brands. We don't want to influence how their brand comes across because we think their voice is very important and needs to stand on their own. That's their kind of being authentic. And for us being authentic, it's kind of being able to be a good kind of custodian of these different brands that are kind of under our umbrella.
Excellent. And I'm gonna actually open it up for questions early in the middle. We don't have to wait till the very end for questions. So if you have questions or start thinking of your questions, I have a couple more for them, and then we're going to open up for some questions as well, okay? Just your heads up, that means think of questions. So Heather, and aside from there, I lost my train of thought trying to get you guys to ask questions. I forgot my question. Let me go ahead.
Yeah.
You say?
I loved what you guys were saying. I always say this thing over and over again, and I think it bears repeating, is that you can repeat yourself. Your customer is not watching you as much as you are watching your customer. They buy jewelry every now and then. So you can repeat who you are, what your message is, or just be yourself, and that authenticity you can smell from a mile away. Yeah. So you don't have to look out there and know what Instagram stickers are they putting. Who cares? Be you. You are enough, and be authentic. And if you're going to the gym with sweaty hair and you're putting a post up, that's great. They love it. So that veering away from polished, I think, and letting people see behind the scenes is super important.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. So before we met Smithy Group, which we were trying so hard to be authentic and to be polished, and we would post 3, 4, 5 times a day, these like epic posts, which was exhausting. And we were like trying to post all these stories that just trying really hard to be what we weren't. And when we met them, the first thing he said was like, so you should just post 1 time a day. And we were like what? And then we realized through working with them and kind of paying more attention to our customers that they did just want us to post what we were doing. We didn't have to try so hard, and it really isn't that complicated. We were repotting plants at the front of the store, and we posted some pictures, look at the green thumb, and so many likes and shares, and we were like, what? So we just realized they really do just want to see what you're doing and who you are, and it's just like a quick picture. It doesn't have to be a great picture, just what you're doing.
And I would say it kind of reminds me of what the Dolly Parton challenge that was hit social big time is. The reality is who you need to be is amalgamation of all of that.
Yeah.
I know it's all cliche. It's like, here's your LinkedIn profile, and then here's your Facebook, which is family friendly, and then Instagram, and I think the other one was Tinder.
Yeah.
Maybe leave Tinder out, but the other 3 seem to be. But it's kind of showing all sides. I think if you continue to try to focus that I need to be this person, then you're not really being authentic because you're overthinking who you want to be versus who you just are. Yeah. So social should be very almost fluid in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I guess just more to your question, essentially, I'm sure, I don't know how many of y'all are retailers out here in this audience? Just a few. And then how many of you are like manufacturers or brands? I don't know. What is everybody else? I don't know. No
Designers.
So, I mean, just think about, like, why are people coming to you? And again, even though the store is named after me, they don't come because I'm there, because I'm really not there very often. It's my team. And they're so friendly and wonderful and knowledgeable. And so that's part of your story, too, essentially. It just, again, have your point of view. Maybe think hard about it and do your own branding exercise. Like, if you were a car, what kind of car would you be? If you were like food, I mean, there's all these things you can do to discover who you are. It takes a while to think about it if you've never done that, but it's really fun, and then it'll help you.
Do you feel that there's a difference in how you work with branded collections or designers from an online e-commerce or from a in-store perspective? Like you were mentioning, yes, you carry brands and stuff, but a lot of your focus is on your brand, right? Your point of view, your perspective. Shay, you guys also carry branded collections, and Markas 6, you a little bit of both, but mainly brands. Do you see it different, and do you see the way and the relationships you have with branded collections versus your own brands online differing in the future compared to now at all?
I mean, absolutely. For us, we have so many great suppliers and designers and vendors. We only brand the brands that have a strong brand presence and have a following. If we're selling chains, nobody cares who makes the chains. We don't say it's our chain, but we just are like, chains. That's it. And so if we're going to pick up a new designer line, they need to have a strong brand following, essentially, because that's important to our customers, too. People love to, again, discover the person behind the brand.
Shay, how does digital marketing and that brand play into the partners and brands that you carry in store? And how much do you work on branding Carter's versus branding and like using brands to leverage to like elevate Carter's?
Well, I think the ones that have a strong brand presence, like Christopher Designs and great social media content, and they tag back and forth, we'll go and we kind of put it everywhere and promote it. But a lot of the other brands that don't will display and sell by like personality.
Okay.
And so we've decided to do like different displays too. Like the case looks like a zennial. This case looks like a baby boomer. Like, you know what I mean? And
I won't ask you what a baby boomer looks like versus a zennial and all
it's
that.
like very elegant.
Oh, there you go.
And classy.
There you go. Heather, what about online? So in the online marketplace space, you are a collection of brands. How do you put that balance in the online space, in the online marketplace space, between your brand and their brand?
Well, so we merchandise in two different ways. So we obviously have merchandising of people who just want to look for rings, and it's an amalgamation of everybody's piece. Obviously, the brand would be listed, but you can kind of search and filter based on, I want something that's blue. But we also have then designer pages where it's a bit more in-depth about that specific brand or that designer, a bit more of their story, and we're actually adding an additional layer that will actually almost be more of like an article about them. So it's just more than a blurb. It's a bit more of kind of a think of question and answer, but in a really, approachable way. So I think it's important that you kind of allow a consumer to navigate online the way that they would want to. So some people are going to come in with a very specific point of view, like, I like this brand, I just want to see what they have, what's new. And other people are like, I may want to just look at earrings and rings. I don't really know what I want until I kind of see it. So you also have to build the tools to allow them to do that and kind of focus in and filter down to, what's 100 things versus 2,000 things for them to look at.
Questions? We'll take a question real quick if anyone has a question from the audience. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. The industry at large, when it comes to e-commerce and online marketplaces, outside, and then retailers moving into e-commerce and online, outside of the need to have a physical presence and the need to have a digital presence, what are potential blind spots that you see people having the opportunity to miss out?
That's a really good question. What are the potential blind spots? I was looking for a yoga in structure for my husband who wanted to become more flexible. And
Follow Shay and Carter's jewelry.
I know.
See them
We can downward facing dog together. And I went all over online. I went on the community page. I went everywhere. I was looking for someplace that was not a half an hour away because I live next to a chicken farm and a cow farm. And I couldn't find anything. And 3 weeks later, I found out that 5 minutes walk from my front door was a yoga class. So I think a big blind spot is thinking that you're too small to need to be present online, or too large to need to be present in person or online. Wherever you are already crossing yourself off the list, pause and say, wait, let me think of the consumer. Let me think of the person whose problem I'm hoping to be solving. Where are they looking for this information? I've got to be there. So I think the minute you say, that's not for me, stop yourself and challenge yourself. This could be an opportunity. We've had designers say to us, I don't want to be overexposed, which I liken to saying, you go to the gym and you say, I don't want my muscles to get too big. That's not likely. People are not watching you as much as you're watching them, and there's almost no ability to be overexposed, and if you're being knocked off, you're doing something right. Yeah. So I think that the minute you have crossed something off the list, you're limiting your opportunity to harness the power of the digital world to drive traffic into your store, or vice versa, the power of in-person events, pop-ups, parties, lunches, things that don't have anything to do with your jewelry to drive people to your website. So the overwhelming message I have is there's huge opportunities that people aren't harnessing either because they're intimidated or they've just decided it's not for them without thinking of the consumer first. Who's looking to solve a problem, and how are you uniquely positioned to solve it? How can you make sure they find that out? That answer your question?
Yeah, that was great.
I wanted to add, also, I think a lot of people are afraid that it's too expensive or too difficult, but I say buy a little less jewelry and spend more on digital, because you can turn your inventory faster. Yeah. And then you have more money.
And you guys have even, that's a real problem in the retail space, right? Aged inventory, things of that nature. And Heather, you guys have even started, what's interesting is when we started talking is that not even just as a marketplace, not only just manufacturers, designers, wholesalers are on there, but actually retailers have that chance too, which is an interesting sort of, enlighten us a little bit on how retailers can use the site.
Well, we've talked to several retailers and they all kind of see it as a different opportunity. So some is aged inventory of, I just need to get these things to move.
And they can do that branded or unbranded, right?
Branded or unbranded. There's the other opportunity of maybe they're discontinuing a designer, but their brand and store doesn't really allow for them to really do discounts without kind of getting that icky feeling. So it turns into, an opportunity for them to move that inventory on, free up the in-store space for, new brands that they're bringing in. And then the other one is also the opportunity for consignment. So maybe they're, in store, they don't do a lot of consignment, but they have opportunities that they can't just pass up. So it's like, okay, where do I take that? People don't know me as carrying, estate pieces. So we can turn into also an opportunity for them to leverage it, possibly a whole new business line.
So they could buy the estate piece off the street, but then if they don't have the customer, they can turn it on your site.
Yeah, turn it on the site.
What about how many manufacturers or designers are in the space? Manufacturers, wholesalers, or designers are in here? What are the biggest things that they need to get, and I'll ask you and you, but what are the biggest things that they need to impress you and get them in your store, right? Get in your cases, and then once they're in the cases, what are the biggest needs that you have from them? Let's assume great imagery, but maybe not. What do they need what do you want from them to get in the store, and then once they're in, how do you support them? How do they support you?
I think when they have a really clear and great story, it makes it really easy for us to take it home and then share that, especially if it aligns with like how we feel or how we are. And then obviously good imagery, but also consistency. I feel like sometimes, they say one thing at the show and you get back and it's different. And then
can you give us not specific names, but specific areas of consistency that you're really looking for? Things that are like
oh, it takes 4 weeks, and then you get home and it's like, oh, it's 8. It's 8 weeks now, and you're like, oh, okay, because it was 4, now it's 8, and then the next week it's 6, and I'm like, and then you're kind of at the mercy of whoever answers the phone, and it's just like, just like a whole nother thing. I'm not going to say any names.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Just because we are retailers, we have to deal with customers. We love them. We deal with customers all day. So we get to be the customer. So it's nice to have a great experience and a great conversation, and just like they have to mean what they say as well as we do. So it just would be nice to be a customer every now and then.
Okay.
Yes, everything she said. And I think, too, just as a retailer, like we view our customers as partners and lifetime, friends and customers as well. And so we only work with vendors and designers that do the same thing. And that will, for us, like trading back jewelry, stock balancing is really important because we want to have a product that sells and moves all the time. We reorder every week. So if something's not moving, we want to just swap it out. Just some sort of stock balancing policy is really important to us.
What's your ideal? Just even.
1-to-1 or 2-to-1, 6 months or so. Like essentially, we don't want jewelry sitting in our cases for a year, and neither are customers. They're like, I saw that bracelet. It's like they want new jewelry. So if you have a product that's amazing, you should stand behind it, just like we would, and trade it back or melt it. That's a great thing about jewelry is you can just remake it. It's just part of the business, essentially.
Yeah, and if you don't believe in your product enough to stock balance it 1-to-1, why should we? Because if we're trying to sell more of it, then we would both make more money.
Heather, is that any different for the online marketplace world? Expectations from your suppliers or partners?
No, it's not really different at all. I would say that the other thing is content and consistency in content and frequency. So I think a lot of people think, I've created a collection. Now I've created the content that justifies that collection. That really works, especially when it's in store and you can have something that sits a little bit longer. But when you're in a digital space, it's a lot more churn when it comes to things that you need to be showing, whether it's in the social channels or even on the site. So thinking about, okay, how often do I need to be generating content, even though my collection is consistent, so that we're continuing able to kind of tell the story and maybe deepening the story. I would also say the biggest challenge is people finding their voice and being able to be very clear with who they are, what is their brand, and consistency and how that's represented across not only our site, but even how their touch points with consumers.
Which is totally different in person versus online too. Clarity and consistency of message, right? When you're selling something in store, you can sit there and you can tell the message, you can give all these other personal experiences and all these other things around that designer's brand or that manufacturer's brand. But online, it's like, here's the blurb. I have to hook you on that spot and make you click read more or something else.
Yeah, make you click, but not only that, they're online, so they're going to go and look at your Instagram page, they're going to look at your Facebook page, and if all of a sudden that's different than what's here, then it's all okay. The message isn't consistent.
Yeah.
They're gonna just Google search your name or the brand, and so all of that stuff does matter especially online, because they go and they price match.
Yeah.
It's easy to do, right? It's all right there at your fingertips.
So not only what they're providing you for content, but their own actual branded content, their site, their Instagram.
Absolutely. So anytime even a brand kind of says, okay, well, we're going to do a blowout sale for the holidays. Well, unfortunately, if I'm carrying that brand, there's some challenges there for us, because if they search and they find that, well, of course they're going to go price competitive.
Anything else to add to that, Elle?
Yeah, I love that you highlighted that there are a lot of manufacturers out there. And I think just like we're finding in retail, it's no longer this hyper-focused spotlight. It's becoming a much larger world, online, offline, where you're functioning in retail. And in the manufacturing space and in the B2B space, that's the next, big evolution, is that buyers are people too. Yeah. And they want to get to know you, and they want to get to know your brand, and they want to know, like, and trust you, and they want to hear your consistency. So B2B is like a huge opportunity for you to be present on LinkedIn, get Sales Navigator, show up online. All the things we're talking about for retail also apply to B2B. You have to be present everywhere and show up where the people who you want to solve a problem for are looking for it.
Any questions come up from the audience? Oh, yes, ma'am, and then over here. If you can use the microphone just for the recording.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Coming from a store background and now being an online buyer, I've seen, of course, over the years, stores dwindle away. And then now I see we're starting to add new stores. So I'm not sure who to direct it to, but I'm just curious, 10 years down the road, 20, whatever's relevant, where do you see I guess, the penetration to total sales revenue, stores versus online?
I mean, I think it's always going to trail behind traditional retail. I think that there's always going to be a strong importance on physical retail. I think that tangible, like, you're spending a lot more money. You're not buying a T-shirt if it doesn't fit, you can't return it, no big deal. Just throw it in the Goodwill pile and move on. This is a very different scenario, and it's a very emotional purchase. So I think so the number I quote is 22% of all retail sales will be coming from online by 2023. I don't think you're going to see that in the luxury space quite as strict, but I do think you're still going to see a lot of growth, especially from established customers. Yeah. So it turns into, it's a repurchase, a continued relationship with somebody that has a huge upside and opportunity.
So I think that's a great question, by the way, and I see it as in my gut instinct, which 80-20 is, usually bears out in the data, is that it is going to be really big, especially on those things like the J. Crew pants, where once you know it's right, I don't have time. I don't have time to drive to a store, and so if there's anything that's repeatable, I think that we're going to see that figure be higher than we think, even in luxury. I really do, and the most important thing is that the retail store is not going to look anything like it looks today. And people are already starting to do the right things. It is going to be your opportunity to have a delighting experience. And if one more person walks into a store and sees a 3-foot glass case, they're going to kill themselves. So we got to have coffee shops. We got to have Veuve Clicquot. We got to have, somebody coming in whose money can't buy experience that is driving them to show up, know, like, and trust, and then go, I'm going to go back there when I'm ready to buy. Relationship building. Retail is no longer store. It is relationship building, transact where you want.
Yeah, that's good.
So just a part two of that, and sorry, just an extension of that. So I think, Heather, you had said that like 65 to 70% of the journey starts online. So between the split of online and brick and mortar, should you have a super vast assortment online and a very curated assortment in store? Should it be even, or like, how do you see that melding? And that's not just, I mean, that could be for anyone. Sorry.
I love this question. And I do think you have to be focused on your consumer. And the more you talk to them and listen to them, there is going to be a certain type of consumer that wants to purchase online, and that is maybe a different gal or guy who wants to only purchase in the store. And then there's a third and separate person that does whatever they're in the mood for at the time. And so you have to pay attention to that. I think you have to curate your assortments accordingly. And you have to make sure that you can support it, obviously, in terms of providing the same experience online and in store. When I had my own online jewelry retailer, the average ticket online was $2,500. The average ticket in the store was $5,500. So I think about online as making sure when you guys have a store, you figure out what you want to put towards the front of the store, what you want them to see next, that journey. So the navigability of your site, which you mentioned earlier, is super important, that you're walking that consumer that you've paid attention to, you focused, hopefully you've had the data catcher points, you know where they're going, where that first, second, third, and you're delivering up to them what they then linger on because you're capturing and analyzing that data. And you're taking away the stuff that doesn't capture their attention. So you, by no stretch of the imagination, should have exactly the same things in the store as you have on the website. They're two different people.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please. That way we can just have it for the recording.
Sorry, too high. Okay, so I come from, I think, the combine between three of you, retails, and then Instagram, Facebook, go to the store, online. So my question for you is, what is the price points for three of you? Like what you think, if you can buy online, what is the top you can pay, and same with retails.
Okay. Where are you seeing the ceilings or the averages for cart sizes online in store, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, well, I think it just depends on your customer. So I think that's going to vary based on your audience. So my answer and her answer and your answer at the end, I mean, they're just different. I mean, That, again, is going to vary on the customer. So I can't answer that question.
It depends on your relationship.
Yeah, it depends on your customer.
If they've purchased something from you before, and maybe they came in at a $500,000 price point, and they had a really great experience, they're going to come back and they're probably going to spend a little bit more. So it's really going to be more about the kind of consumer relationship and where you are in that relationship to what the ceiling is.
Right, but that I think what they're saying is that it varies. So for example, we've had a customer that in 4 days, online only, does upwards of $2 million in sales with an average price point of transaction of over $500. So when you average that out over those things, you're talking a wide delta between your lowest price points and your highest price points. So seeing things of several $1,000s, perfectly fine online, but there's a very, very strong brand equity organically to the brand versus someone that has no brand equity in that space. It's hard to sell a $100 piece of jewelry that we've seen for clients in there. We've also seen people sell 6-carat amazing diamonds via Instagram, right? Off of a DM versus, and that's, price it as you will, the prices on that, right? Versus some people won't sell anything on Instagram because of the brand equity. I don't know if you want to add to that, but.
Well, you just even on top of that is when you start selling online, you start getting a lot of data.
Yeah.
So being able to capture that data and to be able to mine that data and kind of work forward and say, okay, this is where I am now. Where do I want to go? And how do I use my data to inform those decisions? So you may start out at a lower price point, but that doesn't mean that's where you're going to end up.
Yeah, I think people look at that question from the data perspective of what we see on working with a lot of retailers or a lot of brands. People look at that question in the reverse order. We're looking at it as what can your brand drive for price, not what will the customers. The price ceiling isn't customer based, it's brand based, right? So people will buy Christian Louboutin shoes online for $2,500 because they know the brand, not because that customer's price ceiling is higher than someone else's, right? It's based on the brand ceiling, I believe. I want to give Jennifer a couple minutes here at the end to tell you a brief minute about WJA and talk kind of about what we have going on. We have all sorts of great content that comes from WJA throughout the year. We're generally at every trade show, every major trade show. But before we do that, I wanted to give our panelists a round of applause and just thank them for sharing their time and their expertise today. Thank you all so much. I'm hoping you'll stick around. I'm sure there's more questions if you'll stick around for individual questions. We'll move over here so they can wrap up. But before we do that, Jennifer, did you want to say a couple? I put you on the spot here. Do you want to say a couple minutes about WJA?
I want to say thank you so much for attending today. Again, like Ben said, we are at every major trade show and we'll be in JCK in Vegas. You can find us again across 26 chapters in the US, so please feel free to visit us online. We do have an online presence. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And again, please feel free to ask me any questions. I have my colleague here, Rachel and Anna, and we'll be happy to sign you up today. Thanks so much and enjoy the shows, guys.
Thanks, everybody.